Hello, I'm Colin Green, and you are listening to Spikepit. Well, folks, I have not got much RPG content for you today, but I feel galvanised into recording because, you know, this is Spikepit, and a bit like, my buddy Joe Richter, it does not need to be RPGs all the time for me, and I have been up to a few things that I think people might find a little bit interesting, or even they might identify with, and there could be some takeaways. So first up, the middle-age spread. Maybe I don't know. I don't even know if I'm middle-aged. I guess I'm still middle-aged. I'm not. I don't think I'm old-aged at this point. I'm yet to reach 50, but been piling on the pounds a little bit and decided that. In fact, I was listening to a podcast called Just One Thing. It's on BBC Sounds. It's a podcast by the BBC, and each episode's 14 minutes long, and they talk about little strategies or interesting things that you can just kind of implement into your life. And the guy who records it, I forget his name, but he's a science journalist, and he looks into the research. Even if you have got no intention of taking on board anything he says, and I don't know why you wouldn't necessarily without listening, but it's just quite interesting. One of the things he talked about was how just adding, drinking a glass of water with every meal will probably sort out most of your hydration issues. It's a little bit more involved than that, but if you just sat down, had a glass of water with every meal, would correct shortfalls that are not too serious, should we say. You've got to sort out your other issues, maybe, you know, not drinking too much coffee or anything of a diuretic nature. But if you're that person that feels that you need to drink loads and loads of water under normal circumstances, he was pointing out that this business of chugging lots and lots of water hasn't got much of a foundation backing it up. And I thought, you know what, that'd be super easy just to follow that simple advice. So I've been trying that. Who knows? I'm only probably about a week in with that. So a bit too early to say if that's having a beneficial effect. I think I maybe have had less kind of them afternoon type feeling dehydrated sort of headaches when you're teaching. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to stop for a break or get a drink like some water. A lot of teachers carry water bottles about, but then the other problem is you're nipping off to the toilet when you're supposed to be teaching, and you can't do that. Another thing he talked about was this idea of restricting the hours in which you eat. So I'm already doing what they call a 5-2 diet, basically a normal, fairly calorie controlled diet, but on 2 of the days you really cut back on your calories, so sub 500 calories twice a week. That always seems to do the trick for me. You get into the swing of it. It's not as hard as it sounds or as bad as it sounds. Yeah, so he didn't talk about that specifically, but what they were talking about was restricting the hours of the day where you're eating. So this really impacts on snacking. The way I'm playing this is I get up in the morning. I don't eat until 10 o'clock. Then I've got this eating window. It's a 9-hour eating window that takes me up to 7 o'clock in the evening. Any eating that I'm doing is happening then. That gives me time before I go to bed. It gives me a time to exercise in the morning a little bit without having a kind of a breakfast rattling around or rolling around, churning in my stomach. That suits me fine. I don't do it at the weekend, and it means I have a cup of tea or coffee later just kick off the day simply with a glass of water, which ties me into my next thing, is half-hour walk Monday to Friday round the school playing fields. So going a little bit earlier, get my walk in, gets me all fired up, gets the brain going, gets the blood pumping. Brisk walk, half an hour. Then it's sort of an hour and a half before I have a coffee at tea break time. And yeah, that's basically it. But like I say, just one more thing. Super interesting podcast. There is some other stuff that's slipping my mind now, and I don't want to ramble on and on and on. So bit of a health kick. The weight's coming down. I think I've lost getting on for a stone now. I'll have another weigh in tomorrow. The clothes are feeling a bit easier to fit into. I've I've reversed the trend for having to get a larger pair of trousers. The collars on my shirts are sort of slackening off a little bit, and in myself, I feel much better for it, and it's had a positive impact. Definitely, the exercise, the walking, I've loosened up a little bit, so all good stuff on that front. In other news, I've had old Patches, Thaddeus, has got in touch with me, and we had a little bit of a to and fro on the Google chat, and he was asking about the RPG club. I mentioned the school RPG club. I've had a couple of other interested parties, and gamers like to hear about the next generation. I haven't got that off the ground yet because basically my employer and my department, the engineering department, were keen for me to do some engineering related clubs. So what we've got, and I dare say, these guys will feed into an RPG club. I've got the Vex Robotics Club, and we kind of an informal club. The kids come in every break time, every lunchtime, just hang out. They've got all these crazy projects. I've put together a Google Classroom, and they just find instructions for robots, build them with what amounts to kind of a construction kit, and they're like battling robots, and they have a whale of a time. I almost kind of through the back channels stealth in some engineering assignments to them through the Google Classroom. Interesting stuff, but super worthwhile in terms of their progression in school. We've got some 3D computer aided design kind of assignments that I send to them. Also try and help their literacy with some reading of articles related to technology and space and robots, and they do the Kahoot quizzes. So quite a nice little buzz going with that. And I just started this week. I've got only one attendee, and it's a Key Stage 3 girls only engineering club. This is something to address the shortfall of women in the profession. And we want to encourage girls to come forward, getting interested in science, technology, engineering and maths subjects, something we call STEM. And what that is, it's themed around the future of flight. So we were making some gliders, experimenting with that, looking at biomimicry, different birds and how they have inspired or influenced plane design, or if they haven't necessarily influenced it, the parallels that we see between different birds and different types of birds and how they function and their kind of evolution, and compare it to actual planes and see how it's quite interesting, the parallels in terms of design for to produce a similar result in terms of function. So that's been interesting. Got a super bright young lady, she's very young, very sharp. It's embarrassing. Half the time she knows more about this stuff than me, but I'm just there to encourage her and put things in front of her that maybe will catch her interest, and who knows, maybe one day she'll be, I don't know, heading off out into space, exploring the unexplored. What is it? I'm trying to think of the Star Trek quote, and it's totally slipped my mind. Oh no, it's gone. I don't know. Loads of people now screaming at their phones or into their computers saying Spikepit is this, Spikepit is this. So that's them two clubs. But of course, you know, you've got these bright kids, these curious kids. These are the guys that are really likely to want to jump into the RPG club. They love all that dragons and gaming. And I was talking to somebody about some online RPG, another young girl, super interested. And you know, was at a parents' evening and mentioned to her what was coming up in some of the future work we're doing, and it was like a cartoon. You know, when you see these cartoons where people's eyes are like popping out of their heads, or the characters' eyes are popping out of these heads. This girl, her eyes, I've never seen anything like it. They were literally popping out of her head. I do not exaggerate. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen such an excited individual, just openly stoked and really keen to kind of try out some CAD and 3D modeling and all that stuff. So that was just a joy to behold. Anyway, I have rambled on. Let's get to some of them awesome call-ins, hearing from some old friends. First up, it's Rich Fraser of Cockatrice Nuggets. Take it away, Rich.
Was I summoned? I heard my name and slides. Yeah, again, I'm gonna push for this being a good way to convey information. There is a reason that the business community loves PowerPoint. It is an easy way for you to organize information. It's note cards that you can share with your audience. So there's many great uses in RPGs. I like the idea of chopping up little bits of dungeon and putting it on there. Some of the better laid out dungeons have a zoomed in picture of what's on that page, and you could even move those in there and say, you're in this area of the dungeon, what are you guys doing? Love the idea for popping it up for monsters. I haven't been using it lately. I've been on Foundry because my game went online, and I'm using that in a similar sort of way to pop up pictures and stuff. But my next campaign, I'm trying to figure out a way where I can make an interactive map that everybody can click on, because we're not going to be using it for combat as much because we're not playing 5e.
So I was going to say to Rich, maybe suggest a Google Jamboard for an interactive map, and now I'm thinking to myself, I'm not sure that's what he means. That would be more like a collaborative map with people chucking stuff into the Jamboard. But equally, I guess you could put snippets of information, post-it note style, all around the map, and maybe like a low-tech interactive map. You could do something like that, especially for a simpler map, not for a campaign world, but certainly in a village. Put the map of a village in, or map of a city. As people discover stuff, they can slap on like post-it notes or text boxes and images and things like that, and come up with a mood board. There is some pretty cool collaborative type, what would you call, brainstorming software. I think all of it you have to, well, there's no way you have to pay for all of it, but the stuff I'm a little bit more familiar with, you have to pay for. But they've got like a limitless area of like a massive infinite piece of paper, if you like, and you can like move all over it. The user interface allows you to navigate this space and organize stuff. So unlike a slide, or unlike I believe a Jamboard has got like limited proportions or dimensions, some of these are infinite, and I feel like there's probably some scope to do something there. But the slides, Google Slides, I've never used PowerPoint. I know that's the big boy and one of the first, but Google Slides really suits me, and for all the reasons that Rich was just talking about. So yeah, very cool indeed. But he has got more to say. What about those books then, Rich? Oh, and yeah, I will be following up these tips from Rich for sure. Haven't yet. I normally like to check out some of the stuff before I do my replies, because I feel like a lot of times people call in stuff and put tips, and then you never really hear any more. Like maybe Jason's recommending some films, or Spencer, a number of recommendations that he's made. I've heard him make, Spencer, aka Free For All of Keep Off the Borderlands, of course. He'll make a recommendation, and I've followed up a few, and I like to get back in touch with people with a little bit of an update, really, to acknowledge their recommendation and feedback, and perhaps keep the conversation going a little bit. So definitely going to follow these up, Rich. I haven't yet. Like I say, a little bit remiss of me.
Oh, it's so great to have an audio library. I subscribed to Kindle Unlimited recently, and I'm really getting my reading on. You mentioned Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness, I can't imagine really reading or listening to. It's a short little book, so it only took me a few hours to read anyway. I really enjoyed it. But there's a much better version out there, Apocalypse Now. I'm sure you've seen this movie, and if you haven't, oh my God, go get it. Revisit it. It's definitely a D&D adventure up the river. A couple of other things you mentioned, mindset and kind of positivity stuff. Shad Helmsler is really great. How to talk to yourself when you talk to yourself, or something like that. And Jim Quick has a great all-around kind of brain book. All right, a triple shot for you, Colin. Freakonomics. I have not read the book yet, but I listened to the podcast, and they've got like a whole podcast network thing going. I haven't listened to any of the other podcasts on their network, but man, Freakonomics is a really great audio show. It's really well produced. I think it's on NPR as well, but I listen to the podcast, and it's one of my favorites next to Radiolab.
Talking about Freakonomics, I've checked out another podcast, and also it's an offering from the BBC, called Sneakonomics. It was a series of 9 episodes looking at the history of trainers, also known as sneakers, kicks, tennis shoes, pumps, plimsolls, you name it. There's loads of names. It's a real fascinating blend of history, almost geography, technology, a bit of sports thrown in there. I found it to be very entertaining, very useful in my new career. And in terms of design, there's just loads of these little facts that you can drop into a conversation, something that you can perhaps share with the younger generation. Lots of kids love their trainers, and there's a bit of nostalgia in there. We all like a bit of nostalgia as we're getting a bit older, and this delivers in spades with snippets of some music, talk of break dancing, and yeah, I think you get the idea. And of course, Apocalypse Now. It's all coming back to me. I talked about Rivers in the back catalogue, and I forget who it was. I think it might have been Tim Shorts actually mentioned Heart of Darkness, and Apocalypse Now cropped up then. I've got it on DVD, and it's super long. And I remember I was watching it, and I think the family came home, and I thought, I don't really think this is suitable for the family viewing. I switched it off, and I never got back to it. And yeah, definitely, Rich, if you're listening, I will revisit that. I'll figure it out somehow and get that watched. I know it's a classic film. And talking of films, I've got my last call in of the day from my old buddy Jason Conley. He's going to close out the show, and this could be, for all I know, my last call in from him, because he might go off me a little bit when I hit him with a cease and desist for nicking my my sign off. I should probably say only joking, Jason. Only joking, mate. In case you don't understand my dry humour. Double joking. Oh dear, I better go.
Hey, Colin, listen to your latest episode. Great episode. And, little known fact, don't tell anybody this, but back when I participated in the Society for Creative Anachronism, the SCA in the U.S., the person I portrayed in that nonprofit living history thing was Miles De La Haye, who was, yes, a Norman. So, very cool. I will check out the BBC Norman show. Okay, back to listen to your show. Okay, Colin, finish the episode. How awesome is that Lonely Adventurer called in? He's still out there. Now that some of this mess with COVID's broken up and all, I need to get over and see him. He's only like an hour away from me. So, I need to get up. Maybe I'll go visit him in the Guar Bar. I don't know if you're familiar with the band Guar. G is in golf, W is in whiskey, A is in alpha, and R is in Romeo. But they have like a sports bar in Richmond, Virginia. So I'm going to have to get down there and maybe I can meet up with him there for a beer. Anyhow, take care, Spikepit. Keep up the great work, my friend. And I'll talk to you soon.
And that, as they say, is a wrap. Big thanks goes out to you, the listener, for taking a bit of time out of your day to listen to old Spikepit. Take care, and I'll catch you later.